August 12, 1944. A ditch outside Falaise, France. The air tastes of cordite and scorched earth. For 3 days, the world has been nothing but the percussive, deafening roar of artillery and the high-pitched whine of shells arcing overhead. You learn to distinguish the sounds. The outgoing German 88s have a sharp, authoritative crack. The incoming American 155s, a deep, guttural whoomp that seems to tear the very air apart before impact. Anna Vogel, a 21-year-old Nachrichtenhelferin, a signals auxiliary for the Wehrmacht, has learned these sounds intimately. She lies with her face pressed into the dirt, the tremors of the earth moving through her bones. Her field telephone is dead. The line to command was severed hours ago by a shell that turned 3 men she knew into a red mist. Now there is only silence from her superiors and the unending noise of the approaching enemy. Her Luger pistol, issued but never fired, feels heavy and useless in its holster. She is not a soldier. She is a linguist, a switchboard operator who connected calls and translated intercepts. But here, in the collapsing pocket, the uniform makes no distinction. The grinding clatter of tank treads grows louder, a mechanical heartbeat of doom. It's not the familiar growl of a Panzer, but the higher-pitched, more relentless sound of a Sherman. A voice, raw and cracked with thirst, shouts down the line, "They're here, Americans!" The words are swallowed by a burst of machine gun fire from a Browning .3 caliber, its rhythmic thumping a death rattle for their position. Dirt kicks up near Anna's helmet. She doesn't move. She barely breathes. The shouting stops. The world narrows to the smell of her own sweat and the frantic thumping in her chest. Then a new sound. Boots crunching on debris. Voices speaking English. Not the clipped officer-class English she was taught, but a lazy, chewing drawl. "Check the ditch, Corporal." A shadow falls over her. Anna squeezes her eyes shut, waiting for the bullet. Instead, a boot prods her shoulder, not with malice, but with a firm, questioning pressure. "Got one here, Lieutenant. A woman." Her eyes snap open. A young American soldier, his face smudged with grime and exhaustion, stares down at her. He looks no older than she is. His rifle, a standard M1 Garand, is held loosely, not aimed at her head. For a moment, they just look at each other. 2 young people on opposite sides of a cataclysm, caught in a moment of surreal quiet. He doesn't look like the monsters from the propaganda posters. He just looks tired. "Alfstein," he says, his German clumsy but clear. "Get up." Slowly, Anna pushes herself to her feet, her hands raised. More GIs appear, their faces hard but weary. They disarm her, their movements practiced and impersonal. She joins a growing line of German prisoners, a shuffling column of gray-green uniforms, a portrait of utter defeat. The walk away from the front is a journey through a landscape of hell. The twisted, burning hulks of panzers and trucks litter the roads. The sweet, sickening smell of death hangs in the summer air. No one speaks. The guards are silent, their eyes constantly scanning the tree lines. The prisoners are lost in their own shock, their world shrunk to the back of the helmet in front of them. Humiliation is the first stage of captivity, being stripped of your weapon, your unit, your name. You become a number, a piece of human debris to be processed. Days blur into weeks. A holding pen in Normandy, then a transfer to a larger camp near Cherbourg. She's interrogated, not harshly, but with a relentless bureaucratic efficiency. Name, rank, unit. They already seem to know most of it. She is one of several hundred women, nurses, secretaries, communication staff, all swept up in the collapse of the German 7th Army. They are kept separate from the men, but the process is the same. They are loaded onto trucks, then onto a train, the destination unknown. Finally, the port. A gray sky, a gray sea, and a gray ship waiting for them. A Liberty ship, its hull streaked with rust. A vessel designed for cargo, not people. As she walks up the gangplank, a cold Atlantic wind whips at her uniform. She looks back at the coast of France, the last piece of Europe she will see for a very long time. An American sailor nudges her forward with a gruff, "Keep moving, Fraulein." The gangplank shudders beneath her feet. Below, the dark water churns. The journey into the unknown has begun, and with every step, the feeling of being a person erodes, replaced by the cold, hard reality of being a prisoner. The belly of the transport ship is a metallic, sweating cavern. It smells of diesel fumes, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present stench of vomit. Hundreds of women are packed into the hold, swaying with the relentless motion of the Atlantic. For 12 days, the world is the groan of stressed steel, the slosh of bilge water, and the low murmur of fearful prayers in the dark. There are no windows. The only light comes from bare, caged bulbs that cast long, dancing shadows. Time ceases to have meaning. measured only by the meager meals of hard biscuits and watery stew lowered down in buckets. They are cargo, nothing more. The guards at the top of the ladders are faceless silhouettes, their disembodied voices shouting orders. Sickness sweeps through the hold, and the weak are tended by the strong, a small, fragile community forming in the stinking darkness. Anna, fluent in English, sometimes hears the sailors talking above. They talk about baseball, about their girls back home, about U-boats. The war feels both distant and terrifyingly close. One morning, the thrum of the engines changes. The ship's motion softens. A new feeling, a stillness, spreads through the hold. A hatch creaks open, and a slice of brilliant, impossibly bright daylight cuts through the gloom. "On your feet, we're here." The word spreads in hushed whispers. America. They are herded up on deck, blinking against the sun, their eyes watering. And then they see it. A city of impossible towers piercing the sky, a skyline from a fantasy. Far in the distance, a green statue of a woman holding a torch, the Statue of Liberty, a symbol of freedom they see from behind the ropes and the watchful eyes of armed guards. The irony is a bitter pill. The sheer scale of New York is a psychological blow. Germany is in ruins, its cities flattened. This country, this enemy, appears untouched, a powerhouse of steel and concrete. It is the first true glimpse of how completely they have lost. The disembarkation is another exercise in organized chaos. Down the gangplank and onto the docks, where they are counted, recounted, and lined up. The sounds are overwhelming. The shriek of steam whistles, the rumble of trucks, the cacophony of a language spoken too fast. They are marched to a train waiting at the pier. Not a passenger train with comfortable seats, but a line of drab, windowless boxcars. They are cattle once more. The heavy doors slide shut, plunging them back into darkness, the clang of the lock echoing with finality. The train lurches into motion. For days, the journey continues, a rhythmic, monotonous clatter of steel on steel. Sometimes the doors are opened for air and water at desolate sidings in the middle of nowhere. Anna peers through the jap, catching glimpses of a changing country. The dense green forests of the east give way to rolling hills, then to vast, flat plains of farmland that stretch to the horizon. The sun feels different here, hotter, more intense. Their final destination is a place they have never heard of, Camp Hereford, in a state called Texas. The name means nothing to them, but as the train rattles south and west, the landscape transforms into something utterly alien. The green disappears. The world becomes a palette of brown and yellow under a sky so vast and blue it feels infinite, oppressive. There are no mountains, no forests, no cozy villages like the ones Anna knew in Bavaria. There is only flatness, dust, and a relentless, shimmering heat. When they are finally unloaded, the heat hits them like a physical blow. It is a dry, baking heat that sucks the moisture from your skin. They stand on a dusty platform next to the tracks, a small group of gray uniformed women surrounded by a sea of sun-bleached grass. The guards who meet them are different from the GIs on the East Coast. They are older men, lean and weathered, their faces creased by the sun. They wear the same U.S. Army uniforms, but they wear them differently, more loosely. Some wear wide-brimmed hats that Anna has only ever seen in films. They move with a slow, deliberate economy, their eyes narrowed against the glare. They look like they grew out of the soil itself. They are led toward the camp, a sprawling city of wooden barracks surrounded by endless fences of barbed wire. The dust kicked up by their boots coats everything, a fine, gritty powder that gets in their eyes, their mouths, their lungs. This is their new world, a world of dust and wire under an unforgiving sun, a million miles from everything they have ever known.
Life at Camp Hereford settles into a grim, monotonous routine. Reveille before dawn, the air still cool before the sun begins its assault. Roll call in the dust, the guards counting them off with detached professionalism. The work is hard and repetitive. Laundry, kitchen duty, scrubbing the barracks floors until the wood is pale. The camp is vast, housing thousands of German prisoners, mostly naval personnel from sunken ships and U-boats. The women are kept in a separate compound, a prison within the prison, their interactions with the male prisoners strictly forbidden. The ever-present barbed wire is a constant reminder of their status. The guard towers, stark silhouettes against the immense Texas sky, watch their every move. The American guards are a constant presence, a mix of regular military police and the local men, the Texans. The MPs are by the book, rigid and formal.
The Texans are quieter, more watchful. They rarely speak to the prisoners, communicating with hand gestures or a sharp word. To Anna and the other women, they are an enigma. They walk with a rolling gait, their faces unreadable, their eyes always scanning the horizon, as if looking for stray cattle, not prisoners. Humiliation remains a daily currency. Their letters home are censored, their conversations monitored. They are referred to not by name, but by their prisoner numbers. Anna is 7WG783. The number is stamped on her records, on her mess kit, on the small patch sewn onto her worn uniform. It is a systematic stripping away of identity. Fear is their constant companion. Fear of punishment for some unknown infraction, fear of the guards' unpredictable moods, fear of what the future holds. They have heard stories, whispers from other camps, of cruelty, of beatings, of prisoners disappearing. They watch the guards' faces, trying to read their intent, bracing themselves for the casual brutality they have been taught to expect from their captors. Every slammed door, every raised voice, sends a jolt of anxiety through the compound. They have no rights, no one to appeal to. They are entirely at the mercy of the men with the guns. One sweltering afternoon in late September, a new order comes down. A small group of women, including Anna, are to be transferred to a satellite facility a few miles away, a former farmhouse converted to handle administrative work. It means a break from the drudgery of the main camp, but it also means movement, and movement is dangerous. It is a moment of vulnerability. They're assembled near the main gate. A dusty, olive-drab truck waits, its engine idling. The usual MPs who would handle such a transfer are nowhere to be seen, likely reassigned to a more urgent task. Instead, a handful of the Texan guards approach. They are led by a man in his late 40s, a sergeant with a deeply lined face and pale blue eyes that seem to have seen 1,000 scorching summers. He doesn't shout, he just waits. Another guard arrives carrying a heavy canvas bag. He opens it, and the sound that spills out makes Anna's stomach clench. The clatter of heavy steel chains and manacles. It is a procedure for transporting prisoners outside the main wire, a precaution against escape. But seeing it, hearing it, is different. It is the ultimate symbol of dehumanization. One by one, the women are ordered to step forward. A heavy iron cuff is locked around one wrist, then another around the ankle. A length of chain connects the two, short enough to force them into a stooped, shuffling gait. Another chain links them all together, one to the next. The metal is cold at first, then quickly grows hot under the Texas sun. It chafes their skin. The weight is immense, a physical burden added to their emotional one. They are a chain gang. Anna feels a hot surge of shame and anger. She clenches her jaw, refusing to show the tears welling in her eyes. They are being treated like dangerous criminals, like animals. She looks at the faces of the Texan guards, expecting to see scorn or satisfaction, or at least a cold indifference. But their expressions are hard to read. They work efficiently, their movements sure and practiced, but their faces are blank. As the last cuff is locked, the women stand in a miserable, clinking line, their heads bowed. The sergeant looks them over, then at the waiting truck. He gives a short, sharp nod. It's time to move. And as the guards position themselves to march their shackled prisoners, a profound sense of dread settles over Anna. This, she thinks, is what it means to be truly broken. The journey has just begun.
The heat is a physical presence, pressing down from a cloudless sky. The dust, fine as flour, rises in small puffs with every shuffling step. The sound is a miserable chorus. The rhythmic clink and scrape of 20 pounds of iron chain per woman, the crunch of their boots on the dry ground, the low grumble of the waiting truck. Anna keeps her eyes fixed on the scuffed heels of the woman in front of her. To look up is to meet the indifferent gaze of the guards, or to see the endless stretch of barbed wire that defines her world. The chains bite into her wrist and ankle, a constant, abrasive reminder of her powerlessness. She can feel the sweat trickling down her back, pasting the rough fabric of her uniform to her skin. She and the others brace themselves for the march to the truck, for the shouted orders, for the prodding rifle butts they have been conditioned to expect. This is the ritual of subjugation. The group of Texan broads stands a few feet away. They aren't talking amongst themselves, they are just watching, their Stetsons pulled low against the glare. The sergeant, the one with the pale, weathered eyes, takes a slow step forward. He doesn't look at their faces, he looks down.
His gaze settles on the chains binding their ankles, on the heavy iron connecting them to one another. He stands there for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The silence stretches, thick and heavy. The idling engine of the truck is the only sound in the world. Anna dares to look up at him. She expects to see contempt. Instead, she sees something else in the set of his jaw, a flicker of something she can't name. It isn't pity. It's something harder, more resolute. He turns his head slightly, not looking directly at his men, but addressing them all the same. His voice is not loud, but it cuts through the heat with an unexpected clarity. It's a low drawl, the words stretched out as if they are reluctant to leave his mouth. Get these things off him. The words hang in the air. For a second, nobody moves. The other guards look at him, then at the women, a silent question passing between them. One of them, a younger corporal, hesitates. But Sergeant, regulations for prisoner transport. The sergeant's gaze finally snaps to the corporal, and it is as sharp and cold as blue ice. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. I know what the regulations say. I also know what I'm looking at. He gestures with his chin toward the line of shackled women. You're not haul-loading cattle. They're women. He pauses, and his next words are quieter, almost to himself, but every prisoner hears them as if they were shouted. They ain't animals. It is not an order given in anger, but a statement of fact, a declaration of a principle he seems to have just decided upon. One of the other guards nods slowly and walks back to the bag the chains came from. He pulls out a set of keys. The corporal, after a moment's hesitation, does the same. They move down the line, a quiet, almost reverent procession. They don't speak to the women. They simply kneel in the dust. Anna watches as the corporal approaches her. He fumbles with the key, his large, calloused hands clumsy with the small lock on her ankle cuff. He avoids her eyes, his focus entirely on the task. The metallic click of the lock opening is impossibly loud. The heavy cuff falls away. He moves to her wrist, and with another click, the chain slithers to the ground in a dusty heap. The sudden lightness is dizzying. Anna stands perfectly still, her arm feeling as if it might float away. She flexes her fingers, rubbing the raw red line on her wrist. She looks down the line. One by one, the chains fall. Clink, clink, click. The sound of their degradation being undone. The German women are frozen, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and overwhelming disbelief. No one speaks. They were prepared for cruelty, for indifference, for the casual dehumanization of war. They were not prepared for this. They were not prepared for an act of simple, profound decency. The sergeant watches until the last chain is removed. He gives a curt nod. All right, get him in the truck. The tone is back to being businesslike, but the world has fundamentally shifted. Anna stands free of her chains, the dust settling around her feet, and she stares at the back of the sergeant as he turns to walk toward the truck. She cannot comprehend what has just happened. In the heart of an enemy nation, in the middle of a brutal war, a man she saw only as a captor had looked at her, and for a fleeting, powerful moment, had seen a human being.
The ride to the satellite farmhouse is short and silent. The women sit on wooden benches in the back of the truck, not speaking, each lost in the echo of the moment. The oppressive weight of the chains is gone, but the ghost of their pressure remains on their skin. Anna looks at her hands, still marveling at their freedom of movement. The landscape of baked earth and endless sky rolling by outside feels different, as if a filter has been lifted from her eyes. It is still a prison, but the nature of the walls has changed. The guards in the cab do not look back. When they arrive, the sergeant simply points them toward the building. Work details inside. Foreman will tell you what to do. And with that, he and his men drive away, leaving the women standing in the yard, blinking in the sun. That single act of humanity does not end the war. It does not unlock the gates of Camp Hereford, but it becomes a quiet turning point in Anna's captivity. The crushing despair that had been settling over her for months begins to recede, replaced by a bewildering and fragile sense of hope. The world is not entirely composed of monolithic, faceless enemies. It is made of individuals, capable of surprising acts. The work at the farmhouse is clerical, sorting records, typing lists, a welcome relief from the physical labor of the main camp. But Anna's focus is elsewhere. She watches the Texan guards who oversee them, searching their faces for some sign of the men who had been at the gate. She begins to notice small things she had previously missed, the way they shared cigarettes, their easy laughter when talking amongst themselves. They still kept their distance, professional and watchful, but the undercurrent of menace she had always perceived was gone. One afternoon, a young guard,
the same corporal who had unlocked her chains, finds Anna struggling to lift a heavy box of files. He hesitates for a moment, glancing around to see if any officers are watching. Then, with a quiet, "Here, let me," he takes the box from her and carries it inside. He sets it down, nods once, and walks away without another word. It is a small gesture, almost nothing, but in the context of their world, it is monumental. It is a confirmation that the moment with the chains was not an anomaly, but a reflection of a quiet, unspoken code. They were the enemy, yes. They were prisoners, absolutely. But they were also people, and a line had been drawn in the Texas dust, a line that would not be crossed. The stories of that day spread through the women's compound in hushed tones, a piece of folklore passed from bunk to bunk. It becomes a source of strength, a reminder that their humanity, though suppressed, could not be completely extinguished. It did not make the guards their friends. An invisible wall of language, culture, and conflict remained firmly between them, but it replaced raw fear with a grudging, complex respect. These men, these cowboys from a land so foreign it might as well have been another planet, were not the goose-stepping fanatics of German newsreels, nor were they the cruel monsters of their own fearful imaginations. They were simply men, doing a job they likely never asked for, in a war that had dragged them far from their own homes and farms. Months later, as the war in Europe grinds to its inevitable bloody conclusion, Anna stands by the fence during her evening free time, looking west. The Texan sunset is a breathtaking spectacle of orange, purple, and red, painting the vast, empty sky. She is still a prisoner, number 7GW783. Her future is a blank page. She does not know when she will go home or what home will even be left to return to, but the shame that had been her constant companion since Falaise has lessened. The clink of falling chains has become a more powerful memory than the feeling of their weight. She thinks of the sergeant with the ice blue eyes, a man whose name she will never know, who gave her back a piece of herself she thought was gone forever. In the middle of nowhere, surrounded by wire and watched by her enemies, she had been reminded of a simple, universal truth. You are not an animal. And for a prisoner of war, that small, priceless gift of dignity was a light in the deepest darkness.